Asterisk. Hey everyone. Tonight, I'm about to share a story that I never planned to tell. It happened on a night so quiet, so still, that even the shadows seemed to be holding their breath. It was a rainy night when I decided to explore the abandoned lodge at the edge of town. Locals had always whispered warnings about this place, calling it haunted, cursed, and unsafe for anyone after dark. But curiosity gnawed at me, urging me forward. I parked my car near the cracked wooden fence and approached the main entrance. The lodge loomed in the shadows like a giant, silent guardian of secrets, its windows broken and covered in grime. Every step I took on the wet wooden porch creaked under my weight, echoing eerily into the foggy night. I paused at the door, taking a deep breath, feeling the chill in the air crawling over my skin. The door swung open with a screech, revealing a long hallway choked with dust and cobwebs. The smell of damp wood and mildew filled the air, heavy and suffocating. I turned on my flashlight, the beam slicing through the darkness, revealing antique furniture draped in faded white sheets, broken mirrors leaning at odd angles, and shadows stretching unnaturally across the floor. The silence was deafening, as if the lodge itself was holding its breath. I stepped inside cautiously, my camera ready to capture any evidence, every small sound amplified in the hollow space. Suddenly, a movement caught my eye at the center of the grand hall. There, under the ruins of a broken chandelier, sat a black dog, perfectly still, its eyes faintly glowing like molten gold. Beside it, a white rabbit stared directly at me, unnervingly calm, its gaze almost human. My heart pounded, and I froze, the flashlight trembling in my hands. 1,000 questions rushed through my mind, but before I could speak, the lodge seemed to pulse around me, and I realized this was no ordinary night. Something inside was waiting, watching, and aware of my presence. This was the moment when the ordinary world ended, and the lodge's secret began to unfold. The moment my eyes fixed on the black dog and the rabbit, the atmosphere shifted. The silence thickened, pressing against my chest, and even my own breathing seemed unnaturally loud. The dog lifted its head slowly, ears twitching, as if sensing my fear. Its eyes glowed brighter, casting eerie reflections on the broken floorboards. The rabbit remained still, yet its gaze pierced through me, unsettling and intelligent. I whispered, "Hello, are you real?" My voice trembled and seemed to vanish into the darkness. Then, without warning, the black dog began to change. Smoke curled around its fur, twisting and warping until its body morphed into something unrecognizable. The form stretched, half animal, half shadow, its presence filling the entire hall with a deep, echoing hum. The rabbit hopped closer to my feet, revealing a glowing blue sigil on its forehead, pulsing like a heartbeat. The walls of the lodge seemed to bend and stretch, shadows elongating, mirrors reflecting shapes that weren't there. The chandelier above swayed slowly, though there was no wind. Whispers emerged from the corners, soft and indecipherable, as if the lodge itself was alive, telling stories of the forgotten. The shadow being raised its hand, and visions flickered before my eyes. Rooms I hadn't noticed, people trapped in mirrors, and strange figures watching from the dark. My heart raced. I wanted to flee, but my legs felt rooted. Every instinct screamed danger, but my curiosity kept me frozen. It was then I realized. I had entered a place that remembered the past and could sense the present. And now, I had become a part of its memory. The shadow being, born from the black dog's transformation, loomed over me. Its form seemed fluid, constantly shifting, half solid, half smoke, and every movement sent ripples across the walls of the grand hall. The rabbit remained near my feet, its blue sigil pulsing brighter, illuminating the floor like a living map. Every step I took echoed unnaturally, as though the lodge had become a hall of distorted acoustics, amplifying each heartbeat, each breath. The air was thick with the scent of decay and old rituals. I felt the presence of countless unseen eyes, hidden behind cracks in the walls, lurking in the corners, and reflected in the broken mirrors that lined the hallway. Whispers began to grow louder, forming fragmented sentences, half words, and ancient warnings that I couldn't understand but felt deep in my bones. The shadow being extended a clawed hand, pointing at me, and I was paralyzed with a combination of fear and fascination. Visions surged through my mind. People who had wandered into the lodge long ago, trapped forever, their faces pressed against walls that no longer existed, their cries silent but visible in the flickering shadows. The chandelier's light flickered violently, casting grotesque patterns across the hall, as if dancing to the lodge's own malevolent rhythm. Every object seemed imbued with memory. Even the dust particles floating in the air felt alive, moving in strange patterns as though guiding me toward some revelation. I realized that this lodge was a sentient entity, a repository of every story, fear, and soul that had ever entered. And now, it had marked me. My camera, trembling in my hand, began to capture images not of the lodge as it was, but as it truly was, alive, watching, remembering. The black dog, the rabbit, and the shadow being moved as one, a silent triad of guardians ensuring the lodge's secrets remained intact. I understood, with a chill sinking into my very core, that leaving might be impossible, that the lodge coup. Panic surged through me. My legs finally obeyed my desperate will, propelling me toward the lodge's main exit. But the door slammed shut before I could reach it, a heavy, metallic thud reverberating through the hall. The shadow being glided silently toward me, while the rabbit blocked the doorway, its eyes glowing brighter, almost burning with supernatural intensity. The lodge seemed to stretch endlessly, corridors twisting into impossible angles, walls lengthening, mirrors reflecting places I hadn't seen before. Every attempt to escape only led me deeper into the lodge, and the whispers grew more insistent, forming words that I could feel but not comprehend. My camera, still in hand, captured every horrifying moment, yet the images appeared warped and alive, each frame showing figures lurking closer than reality allowed. The chandelier crashed somewhere above, sending shards of glass spinning like frozen stars, yet no sound reached my ears, only the oppressive presence of the beings surrounding me. I stumbled into a small side room, walls adorned with portraits whose eyes followed my every move, frozen in silent screams. The black dog's gaze penetrated me, the rabbit's sigil pulsing faster, and the shadow being's voice echoed in my mind. "You have seen too much. Now you belong here." Every instinct screamed to run, but I felt a strange pull, as if the lodge itself wanted me to stay, to become another memory within its walls. Summoning all my courage, I lunged through a narrow, broken window, glass cutting my hands, and tumbled into the rain-soaked courtyard outside. The lodge now looked empty, silent, almost welcoming under the gray morning light. Yet when I checked my camera, my blood ran cold. The last photograph showed the dog, the rabbit, and the shadow being, all standing inside, staring directly at me, smiling. I realized then that some places are alive, that some beings never let go, and that part of me would forever remain bound to the lodge's memory, Even after escaping the lodge, the story didn't end. I sat on the damp grass outside, rain soaking through my clothes, my camera still clutched in trembling hands. The morning light made the lodge appear ordinary, almost inviting, but my mind knew the truth. Nothing inside was ordinary. Every shadow, every whisper, every creaking floorboard had been alive. I could still feel the lodge's presence, pressing against the edges of my thoughts, as if it had marked me. The black dog, the rabbit, and that shadow being were no longer visible, yet their memory lingered, vivid and terrifying. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see the blue sigil on the rabbit, pulsing like a heartbeat, and the molten gold eyes of the dog staring into mine. My camera, when I checked it, revealed more than mere photographs. The lodge's memory had imprinted itself onto the images. In some frames, the shadow being seemed closer than it could possibly be, stretching impossibly toward the lens, smiling in ways no human could. I realized that the lodge didn't just observe, it remembered, and anyone who entered became part of its eternal collection. Friends tried to reassure me, asking why I looked so haunted, why I avoided discussing the night in detail. But I couldn't explain, couldn't make them understand that some experiences aren't meant to be shared, only survived. Over the next few days, I noticed subtle changes in myself. Shadows seemed longer, corners of rooms whispered unintelligible words, and I often felt watched, even in the safety of my home. I knew, deep down, that a part of the lodge had followed me, and that the dog, the rabbit, and the shadow being weren't just guardians of a place anymore. They were guardians of a story that had become mine. The memory of the lodge, alive and waiting, would never fade. I could leave the physical space, but the lodge had claimed me. Some nights, I still hear whispers calling my name, reminding me, "You belong here, now, in our story." And I shiver, knowing that escape is an illusion, that the lodge and everything within it is patient, eternal, and always watching. Days passed since my escape, but the lodge's memory clung to me like a shadow I could not shake. Every room in my home felt slightly off, corners whispering faintly, lights flickering as if reacting to some unseen presence. Even outside, the world seemed different. Streets, trees, and abandoned alleys carried echoes of the lodge's whispers. The blue sigil from the rabbit's forehead haunted my dreams, pulsing in the darkness, and every time I closed my eyes, the molten gold gaze of the black dog pierced through me, reminding me I was never truly free. I tried rationalizing, telling myself it was stress, exhaustion, or imagination. But then came the small signs I could not ignore: shadows moving against the light, faint scratching sounds on walls, fleeting glimpses of figures in mirrors. Once, I saw a silhouette in my living room, tall, shifting, half-solid like the shadow being, and it vanished before I could react. The camera I carried from the lodge became both a tool and a warning. Every time I reviewed the photos, new details appeared: the dog closer than before, the rabbit watching silently, the shadow being's smile broader, more menacing. It was as if the lodge had embedded itself into my reality, following me, waiting, growing stronger with my fear. Attempts to leave town, to distract myself with work or friends, did little to alleviate the pressure. Even when I tried to sleep, whispers and visions haunted me. Slowly, I began noticing changes within myself, an unnatural alertness, a sense of unseen eyes on my every move, and a strange understanding of the lodge's dark intelligence. I realized that what I had survived was not merely a physical place, but a sentient entity, patient and eternal, capable of crossing the boundaries between spaces. The lodge had claimed me in ways I could neither escape nor comprehend fully, and the final, chilling truth settled deep in my mind. Some places do not merely exist in the world, they exist in your mind, your memories, and your very being. Once touched by the lodge, I would forever carry its presence, its eyes, its whispers, wherever I went. Weeks passed, but the lodge's influence didn't fade, it only grew stronger. Every night, the whispers returned, louder and more insistent, forming words I could feel but not understand. Shadows no longer just flickered, they stretched toward me, following me through hallways, along streets, and even into the dim corners of my own room. One night, while reviewing the lodge footage, I noticed something terrifying. In every frame where the lodge, the dog, and the rabbit appeared, a faint outline of my own figure stood behind them, unmoving, watching, as if I had been marked, recorded, and claimed. Sleep became a battlefield. In dreams, the lodge expanded endlessly, rooms multiplying into labyrinths, the chandelier above swinging violently, shards of glass frozen midair. The black dog, always closer now, its molten gold eyes boring into me. The white rabbit, its blue sigil glowing like a living pulse. And the shadow being, grinning impossibly wide, were omnipresent. They didn't chase me. They waited, patient and eternal. I realized then that the lodge was not bound by walls or doors. It existed wherever its memory resided. My camera, my mind, even the quiet spaces of my life had become part of it. The final horror struck when I glimpsed my reflection in a cracked mirror. My own eyes mirrored the gold of the dog's gaze, the glow of the rabbit's sigil, and the shadow being's knowing smile. I was no longer merely an observer. I had become part of the lodge's collection. There would be no escape, no forgetting, only presence. Every choice, every step, every thought now belonged to the lodge. Even as I write this, it waits. Somewhere in the dark corners of this world, or perhaps inside me, it breathes, remembers, watches. Some places are alive. Some beings are eternal. And once you cross their threshold, The story is no longer yours. It belongs to them. The lodge, the dog, the rabbit, the shadow being, they are patient. They are waiting. And now, Soam.l